All right. What's up, kids? All this important paperwork up here. I can't see it without glasses, so. By the way, I'm at that point where I don't want to buy glasses, so I go get the readers that you can buy at Walmart. They don't have any higher numbers anymore. So I'm at the peak so I may have to end up breaking down and getting glasses. Any of you aware that Stephen Hawking died? Yeah, that was actually a sad day for me. I've always admired the man's work. Not that I'm a scientist. I admire him because he writes things out so people like me can understand what he's actually working on. Otherwise, if he wrote it out the way it's really written, I wouldn't understand any of it. And we're going to look at some of that. Last time I preached, we talked on the judgment seats. And then we talked about the work of the Holy Spirit when he is grieved or whenever he is quenched. I want to kind of keep moving down the line of those hard questions. So today we're going to talk about the subject matter of why. How many of you ask God that all the time? Why? That's a big question. And what's interesting to me is when I sat out this week to write the sermon, which I start on Monday, and it takes me all week usually. When I started out, this was not the topic that I was going to preach on. I had a real easy one planned out. And then come Friday, it changed. So I had to work really hard on this for 2 days. Now, having said that, I really want to tell you how grateful I am that you guys let me learn the Bible with you. I like the fact that I get to do this. And then I sit here and I just study God. And then you guys, when I talk to you periodically, you'll throw out little ideas that make me want to go study more. You'll ask a question. And so I just want to tell you I appreciate that. This is one of the nicest things of my life. I don't know about you all. And I'm not trying to soft soap you or anything like that. I'm serious. I really like being around people who think about God. I mean, don't you? It's just nice. It's just nice. So let's look at the question of why. We asked the question, why did God let this happen to me? The big one is if God loves me so much, then why did this occur? Isn't that a big one? It's like, how in the world could you throw me in this arena? And I've talked to a number of people who are very bitter and hurt by the outcome of their life. But the reason why they are is they don't understand that they are a part of a great big picture. It's not just you. And that's what's hard about the question of why. You think in terms of yourself so much, in your world so much, that you fail to understand, and you're going to love this term, Alan and I have been talking about it all week, that there's a butterfly effect. Do you know what that is? Everybody, butterfly effect? The argument is that, let's say a butterfly in Tokyo flaps his wings. In Chicago, a tornado happens. Over a period of time, it builds into something much bigger than just that little flapping of the wings of the butterfly. So the butterfly effect, as I was looking at it, I thought, God uses the butterfly effect a lot because out of the small things, bigger things happen. Now, having said that, when I was looking at the question why Stephen Hawking died, and bring up some of his statements, Alan, for me, will you? Now, pay attention. This guy, are you familiar with who this man is? One of the most brilliant physicists that's ever lived. Just brilliant. Look at his statement. Before we understood science, it was natural to believe that God created the universe. But now science offers a more convenient explanation. Do another one. I believe the simplest explanation is there is no God. No one created the universe and no one directs our fate. This leads me to a profound, notice that word profound? Profound realization that there probably is no heaven and no afterlife either. We have this one life to appreciate. Go on. The greatest enemy of knowledge is not ignorance, it is the illusion of knowledge. Now, I really wished I could say that to him. Exactly, Stephen, you're right. You have an illusion that what you think is true is actual knowledge. Look at the arrogance of those statements. Are you seeing that? Now, here's what's amazing to me. Give me, we were looking at formulas. Give me Poincare's formula. Poincare was a scientist 100 years ago. Now, if any of you know how to do this, I want to talk to you after church. But there was a man in Russia that in 2002 finally solved this equation. And what it was that they were trying to solve is there structure or stability in the universe? Now think about that. I've looked at some formulas that literally would be a chalkboard that would cover this whole wall, floor to ceiling, and one math equation on that whole wall. So now here's my problem with statements like what Hawking said. How in the world can somebody who knows there's formulas out there that aren't even solved yet? I mean, literally, there was one formula that took 300 years for them finally to figure out the answer to. 300 years. How in the world can anybody with that much understanding of physics say there is no God? You tell me how that's scientific. You tell me how that's logic and reason. You can't. Yet, it's like, who was it that said we came from bananas? Bill Nye, the science guy. Think about that one. Him and Ken Ham were having a discussion, and Ken Ham looked at him and said, so let me get this straight. We come from bananas. Think about that. That is just insane. I mean, now I understand elements and atoms and all that stuff, but you're going to tell me we came from a banana. Okay. You know that, for instance, and I've said this before, how many of you have been to the bottom of the ocean? Do you think Stephen Hawking has been there? How does he know God isn't down there? He's never been there. Have you been to the farthest ends of the universe? No. Well, how does he know God doesn't exist? Those kind of thoughts to me. Now think for a minute in your own life. The question why. Most of the time when you are frustrated about what's happening in your life, and listen to this because it's hard to wrap your head around it, it is because you think you have answers to why. Or you will develop your answer to why. You'll build this whole scenario. And you will get so convinced that you have the right solution or the right answer that it messes up your joy, it messes up your peace, you actually stop living in a sense. I know people that are very bitter, still to this day, about things that happened years ago. And they still think that God did this or God did that or that person did this or that. They're failing to recognize the butterfly effect, which I really had fun putting God's name to that. Because they're failing to recognize that I'll give you an easy one. I could calculate with absolute expertise the distance, the range, everything I need to throw a ball back there to Alan. And a bird flies through the room and hits the ball and changes all my trajectory. Anything. I could mess up when I threw. Anything can change that. Yet we spend the bulk of our time trying to figure out how to make money, how to keep from getting sick, how to educate our kids, how to get the right car, how to live in the right house, live in the right place, go to the right church, study the right theology. We get so caught up, and I'm guilty of this, of trying to find the most perfect route. Now answer this question for me, especially you that are older. Has it ever gone exactly the way you planned it to go in your lives? I had every intention of being a rock star. I really did. I had long hair and everything. My hair is gone, and I'm not a rock star. I had absolutely no intention of being a pastor. I was going to be a multimillionaire by the time I was 30. Sorry, guys, I don't have $1 million. I don't have a multi-million especially. I didn't ever think I'd marry a redhead. That was the one that was always funny to me. A redhead with freckles. I never thought that. Now I really like redheads with freckles. I don't know what the deal is. But you never have that full knowledge. Never. We agree? You all too quiet. Yeah. You never have that full knowledge. Now you're going to do one or two things with that. You are going to gradually become a person that's peaceful because you actually are starting to understand why. Or you're going to be a person that is continually frustrated and confused because You do not understand why yet. And it's an answer that people don't like, because the answer is, you know it, it's why because God said so. I hate that, though. Don't you hate that? I don't want that answer. I want him to say to me, all right, Dan, here's exactly what we're doing here. Now, what happens in your life right now, 300 years down the road, it's going to change this person's life. But I'm thinking in terms of, no, I don't care about that guy 300 years down the road. I only care about me now, right? So now, if you start building your head around that, as you start developing that, and I'm not going to give you all the answers to it, but when you start looking at why, you have to look at history. Seth, where are you? History, my friend. He told me he doesn't like history. You have to look at history, and I want to give you a fun one. How many of you have been watching the series on the mountain men guys, the pioneers, the people that, it was on History Channel. Nobody's watching it? That's great. Because if you're not watching it, if you're not watching it, then that just makes my story even better. But I want to give you an example. And I didn't know this about Daniel Boone. I lived in Defiance, Missouri for years, and Daniel Boone's son's home is just up the road from us off of Highway F. It's a fun place to go visit. But let me give you an example of why. It's great. It's brilliant. I love it when God does these things. I'm going to give you some history, so stay with me. Daniel Boone is out trapping. The colonies exist. The Revolutionary War is going to be starting fairly soon. He's out trapping. He has a truckload of furs that's going to make him really wealthy. He borrowed money to be able to go do this because his whole motive and goal was to take care of his family. That's what it was. He had no idea of anything else other than that. I'm going to go trap, come back, sell my furs for 10 times what it cost me, make a fortune, take care of my family. He ends up out there in the wilderness. Indians come along, they steal his furs. He heads back to the colonies. He's back at the colonies. Well, he's in court now. Daniel Boone is about ready to be thrown into debtor's prison. Did you know that? Because he couldn't pay his debt back. Now, I'm sure Daniel Boone was standing there in that courtroom saying to himself, I can't believe this. What did I do wrong? I mean, God must be mad at me. I must have done something wrong. Now I'm almost in debtor's prison. He has no idea what's going to happen to him. What he didn't know is that the judge sitting behind the bench that had to pass a verdict on him had just bought basically the whole state of Kentucky. It's 22 million acres or something like that. He had just bought it. And he was looking for somebody to send out there to go out there and start building colony out there, to move people out in that territory that he bought so he could sell his land. Daniel Boone had no idea. So the judge goes up to Daniel Boone and says, look, you got a choice. You either go be the trapper and the tracker and the mountain man that you are for me out in my land and develop it, or I'm sending you to debtor's prison. Which do you want? Of course, he chose, I'm going out there. What's he do? He goes out there and he builds Boonesboro. How many of you heard of Boonesboro? Okay, so he's out there building Boonesboro. Again, keep in mind, he does not see the butterfly effect. He doesn't know any of the stuff. He doesn't know why. All he's thinking about is, I got to take care of my family. And all of these things are happening in his life that are molding and shaping. That's all that's happening. He's not a brilliant man. He's out there, he builds Boonesboro. The war starts. You have up in Valley Forge, about the same time period, within about 6 months apart, you have 2,000 some guys dying from freezing to death and starvation. I'm telling you that out of those group of guys, some of them had to be Christians. Oh, well, that just confuses you, doesn't it? Because, wait a minute, I thought God loves me and he's going to take care of me. Yes, he does love you and he is going to take care of you, but there's a bigger picture, bigger than you, and it's planned. So they're up there dealing with the British up in there, and the British have formulated a brilliant plan. They're going to squeeze them from the east. They pushed them all the way down into Pennsylvania. There's no way they can win this war. The French won't get into it because they know they can't win. The British decide we're going to come down from Canada from the north, and we're going to come back through the west past Boonesboro, and we're going to squeeze the colonists. Every historian now knows that Boonesboro was one of the most critical things in us winning the Revolutionary War. Did Daniel Boone know that? He had no idea. No idea. So Boonesboro gets attacked. And his daughter, Jemima, which is fun to study, she was a great girl. She gets kidnapped. He finds her, brings her back. He goes out to collect salt because all they can eat is meat because they're fighting the Indians all the time. They get captured. They go back to a British fort. The British commander of the fort says, you're going to go back to Boonesboro and you're going to tell them to surrender. Daniel Boone's on his way back. He escapes from the Indians, runs 150 miles, 4 days. 150 miles to get back to the fort before the Indians get there. You're going to love this. Stay with me. He gets back to the fort. The Indians show up, 450 of them, 60 people in the fort. You can't win that fight. 7-1. That's a hard fight. And they are in that fort, starving, dying, all of that, fighting these Indians. And finally, the Indians get tired of the siege and they decide we're going to burn the place to the ground. So instead of using guns, they just start launching burning arrows into the fort. And the fort is now on fire. They're going to die. You know that. Guess what happens? It rained. It rained. As the fort started to burn, it started to rain. Wonder who did that. Wonder who did that. But no, the question of why, I guarantee you, was going through the minds of the men in the fort and the women in the fort. I'm sure at Valley Forge, the questions of the men who were dying were why? Why me? What did I do? I must be doing something wrong. I mean, would that not be how you'd be thinking? How in the world did I end up here in Valley Forge starving? How do we know? And I'll give you a fun one. If you've read Job, Satan has the ability to mess with weather just like anybody else. How do I know Satan didn't cause the snow at Valley Forge? Just like God caused the rain at the most critical point of the war that it needed to happen, which that fort needed to stand. You know what's great? And I'll give you this as the last part for fun. They set out at the fort to destroy the Indians. They were going to go kill them all. Daniel Boone wouldn't do it. Daniel Boone said no. If you look at his history, he never started a fight. He only defended himself. And when the fort decided to go kill the Indians, Daniel Boone and Jemima loaded up and left the fort because they were violating a biblical principle. I think Daniel Boone was a godly man. Now, having said that, how many of you think you know enough to say something like Hawkins said? How many of you think you know enough to determine the outcome of your lives and the lives of your family members? How many of you think for a moment that because something's bad, that God doesn't have the ability to make it good? Listen, my wife and I have no business being married. I was 17, she was 16. I've told you the story. I've been married 37 years. Go ask every teacher I ever had if they thought I would ever make it out of jail. They will tell you, no, he's going to jail. They would be shocked to know that through those small little things that God was forming and molding and shaping me to a day where I'd be standing here, where you would be sitting there. I'm telling you, the mathematical genius, if you want to use that term of God, is unbelievable. You haven't seen the equation he uses to maintain and control all of life. I mean, think about it. Who's the one that tells sap to start going back up in trees? Have you ever thought those thoughts? Who is it? You know, those moments, I think we're going to be shocked when we stand before him and we find out that there was a multitude of things that were going on around us that he stopped that you had no idea. I wonder how many times germs have tried to infect your body and God's going, no, that's not going to happen. But when it seems like things are wrong, what do we first start thinking? Bernard and I have had this conversation multiple times. Because in ministry, it's very frustrating sometimes. You're just like, what's this? You know. And I know you have too. I want to take you somewhere, and I want to show you what Hawkins didn't know. Let's go to Job 38. Then the Lord answered Job, and I can just see this now. I could just see Hawkins sitting there and God going, all right, now you get ready to hear what I have to say to you. You know. Then the Lord answered Job out of the storm. He said, who is this that darkens my counsel with words without knowledge? Brace yourselves like a man. I will question you, and you shall answer me. Where were you when I laid the earth's foundations? Tell me if you understand. I love it. Who marked off its dimensions? The mathematical formula. I love it. Surely you know. Who stretched a measuring line across it? On what were its footing set? Or who laid its cornerstone? Do you see all that? Isn't that, come on. If you're not getting giddy over that, you're missing something. This is your God talking. What's he telling you? You don't know anything. Yeah, to trust. You don't know anything. While the morning stars sang together and all the angels shouted for joy, who shut up the sea behind doors when it burst forth from the womb? When I made the clouds its garment and wrapped it in the thick darkness, when I fixed lines or limits for it and set its doors and bars in place. We can go on. How many of you have read Job? Is that not a great answer of God? Can you see him saying to all these mathematicians that spend years trying to figure out if the universe is stable? Now think about it. They're trying to figure out if the universe is stable. Well, we must be smart people. Because all we did is went and read our Bible and said, oh, well, yeah, it is, because God said it was. I mean, well, according to Stephen Hawking, you're stupid. But one of the oldest writings in your Bible is discussing that God is absolutely the designer and the controller and the maker of all things. That should give you great confidence. If it doesn't, when you read this text, then you are stuck in the area of why that is the area of disbelief. Do you understand what I'm saying? If you don't trust what God has said, you are in the area of fear, doubt, worry. All of that's got you because you're not letting him answer the why. He's answering the why here. He's telling you why. Everything is in existence because what? He has absolute, total control of it all. Even the bad things that happen, he knows and can handle. And it's part of a bigger plan. Do we agree? You have to agree. I don't care how smart you are or you think you are, you don't know what you think you know. I don't. And I'd like to tell you I'm smart. I at least try to con you into thinking that. Now look at what we should do. And here's the answer. Go to Job 42. And I'm not going to make this long. You guys get off easy today. After Job has this major discussion with God, and if anybody had the right to ask God why, it was him. Would you agree? What did I do for my whole family to get wiped out and get boils all over me? And then you gave me a wife that wasn't too nice. Then Job replied to the Lord, I know that you can do all things. How many of you know that? That's easy, isn't it? You know what the hard part is? Believing it, accepting it, letting it take hold, letting it do its work. Then Job replied to the Lord, I know that you can do all things. Keep in mind, this guy has no Bible. This is way back. No plan of yours. Wait a minute, what's that? No plan of yours. No plan of yours can be what? What's that? What did he just tell you? What's no mean? None. Zero. Doesn't matter what's happening. Doesn't matter what's happening. No plan of God can be changed. It's there in place. It will happen the way he wants it to happen. You may not like the route he takes you, but it's going to happen. That's a guarantee. You asked, who is this that obscures my counsel without knowledge? Surely I spoke of things I did not understand. Things too wonderful for me to know. You said, listen now, and I will speak. I will question you, and you shall answer me. My ears had heard of you, but now my eyes have seen you. That is a deeper understanding. He's saying, I now really know you. Therefore, I despise myself and repent in dust and ashes. I love the statement despise. For me, when I looked at that, I don't see a negative terminology. I set myself aside. I shut down what I think. I put me off. And I now recognize that you are the answer and the solution to everything in my life. Do we agree? You're all too quiet. I got the front row. I love the front row. Come on. Let me put it to you this way. If you are struggling in believing in the sovereignty of God, let's sit down and spend hours talking. Because I know each one of you have stories where you've seen it. I've seen it. Amazing things happen. Things that I had no idea were going to happen, especially when I was in business. I had an ordeal where I was going to get taken to the cleaners, and months before I had made a maneuver where I sold off shares of stock. I'll just give you a quick one. I had no idea that that company that was over here, the bank was going to try and hack into, but they couldn't touch it because I sold the stocks just enough time before they could do it. If I would have sold them any later than the date I did, there's nothing I could have done. You tell me I did that? I wasn't that smart. That was the hand of God. It's amazing how many times I've seen him do things like that. I also have had him take a child from me. I've had children that were desperately sick, seriously sick. I have seen him forge through all of those things and faithfully move down the road that he planned to go down. I can't tell you how many people tried to tell me why God took my child Adam. It's amazing to me how many Christians think they know the answer to that. Really? You know why a perfectly healthy baby died. You know that. Interesting, amazing. You must have godlike knowledge. You know, I never got mad at him. I just always look at him going, okay. Nobody knows that, but I know this. In that very moment, at that crisis, he loved me. I knew it. That was amazing in itself. People miss that. Just in that moment when I should have been hating his guts, I was overwhelmed with affection for him. Where'd that come from? Oh, the butterfly. That's where that came from. A series of events that led up to a moment. So what do you think? What are you going to do this week? Come on, guys. What are you going to do this week? I watch people watch this. Listen, I don't care who's president. I don't care who's in Congress. I don't care where I live on this planet. I like it that I live in America, but sorry, this is not my home. Those are not really my leaders. God is my leader. And whatever they do is according to his plans, not theirs. They may think they're smart, but they're not. Guys, think about it. Why should I be concerned? That's the question. Why should I be bothered? You know the story of General Jackson? Do you know that that man would ride into fire when they'd be shooting at him like it was nothing? You know why? He was convinced he would die the day God had destined him to die and no sooner, so he just lived. Now, granted, he got shot by his own guys, which I think is kind of funny. but God chose the day. God chose the day. So when you leave this week, I don't know what's going on in your worlds, but I can guarantee you a few things. You will die someday. You don't know when. You will pay taxes probably forever. Don't know when that'll stop. Right? But I want to give you more to that. When your God says he loves you, he really loves you. When God says that he's in control, he's really in control. And the issue is you believing that, not whether he's in control or not. Whether you like it or not, he's in control. And he's committed to his plan. More than he is committed, and I'm going to say this, and hopefully you'll understand what I'm saying, because it's a stretch, but you need to see it this way. He is committed to himself far more than he's committed to you. He has to be for you to experience the blessing. So I want to leave you with this one last thought. This was the thought I really liked, and I stole this from a pastor that Bernard used to work with, which was Tommy Nelson. A great line. I want you to keep this in your head. Just think about it. We are asked by God to sometimes set aside that which is good for that which is best. Isn't that a great line? You know how many times you try to hang on to what's good and you miss the best because you're not trusting God with the situations going on in your life? Sometimes he says to you, let go of the good things so I can give you the better things. And you know it as well as I do, and I'll shut up now. If this whole planet were to instantly say to God, we're going to do everything according to your will and your plan, what do you think your life would be like in the moment that decision's made? What do you think it'd be like? It'd be excellent. The wars would stop. The hatred would stop. You would love your brother as yourself. You would love the Lord with all your heart, body, soul, and spirit. all your needs would be met, which they are being met anyway, if you think about it. We've discussed this before. There's not a person in this room, I think, that's gone without food long enough that they starved to death. I'm 54, and I still have clothes and a place to live and heat. I've got far more than I actually need. Do we agree? He's been very faithful to his promise to take care of me. He has you. You're here. You're here. Stop asking why. Start accepting what he says. And you're going to find the peace. You're going to find the understanding that you need. And let Stephen Hawking and all those other guys keep trying to figure out that God's a liar. That's their problem. Right? That's enough. I gave you enough. Oh, yeah, that's just so sad, isn't it? It's amazing you could be gifted so much like he was and throw it all away for what? What did he throw it away for? I've never understood that. I'll give you one more thing now that I'm thinking about it because you brought it up. We've been discussing this, and this is why I like hanging out with the church. Looking at why Satan would make the decision to continue to sin. This one has really perplexed me. Why would he continue to rebel against God when he knows the outcome? I think Christians ought to ask themselves that question. Why do we continue to rebel when we know the outcome? He has the illusion. That's good, dude. Excellent. So, let's pray ourselves out of here and go home and enjoy the rest of the day. Lord, as always, it's our prayer, and I know you know our hearts. I know you know this church's ministry goals. I'm grateful that you've put us in a situation where the Word is the most important thing. I just want to tell you thank you for the fact that you've shown us so much of who you are. My prayer really is, though, Lord, that we move from just seeing it to where we apply it and adapt it. Lord, I pray that in my own life daily. Please get me to that point where I see obedience as being the greatest blessing you've ever offered. Because your intention was to give me life. And your intention is to fulfill that plan. Lord, I pray whatever's going in the lives of all the people in this room, all those negative things that come our way, Lord, I pray that you give them courage, you give them hope, you give them focus, that they learn to look at you and not the storms, that they recognize the perfection of who you are. Lord, I pray that this week we have the opportunity as people to reach people that don't know you, that need help. That we can encourage them in your name and encourage them to be a part of this family. Lord, I pray that you give us great drive for the plan of building that kingdom. Again, I'm glad you know more than me. And again, thank you for your son. Amen. Thanks, kids. I hope you had fun. I did.